Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this lovely Saturday morning here in May. This is our May edition of Meet Us in the Garden, and we're going to talk about gardening and mental health. It's going to be a little bit different than our usual talks because it's not just going to be about gardening, but we're also going to talk a good bit about mental health. I volunteered to do this. I'm a healthcare professional, and I wanted to bring awareness to mental health, and especially the fact that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're going to look at gardening and how gardening can help aid in that mental health side of things for some people. Not everybody, because some people get stressed with gardening, but for some of us it can be very relaxing and stress relieving. And then I'm also going to look at horticultural therapy, which is a term I came across in researching this presentation, and I had never heard of it until now, and so it was just something I thought I'd share with everybody here. So here's our agenda. So we're going to do our review of the spotted lanternfly, and we have a new invasive, the box tree moth, and then we're going to talk about the importance of why do we want to talk about mental health and that benefit with gardening. I'm going to give you some statistics just so you see how wide-ranging it is, the connection between mental health and gardening, the physical and mental side of it, some ideas of how to get started if you guys aren't gardeners now, some easy ways to get going, and then at the end of it there we'll talk about that horticultural therapy. Perfect. So here is our reminders about the spotted lanternfly. It's now been found in all the counties here in Ohio, so we no longer need to report it, so to speak. They still recommend you're going to kill it at all stages, whether it's the egg masses or the full adults, and that it does have that impact to our grapes, hops, and the maple industries here in the state. Here again is just a reminder of what it looks like. Currently we're in that either the egg masses or the early or late instars. We're kind of more in that early stage of it here. So again, if you see the egg masses, scrape them off and destroy them, and then if you see any of the instars, get those. Beginning in July through November is when you'll see those lovely adults flying around, so kill them at any means possible. Here's our new one. This is the box tree moth. This is a new invasive here in the state. It's a non-native pest to our boxwood industry, and it was first detected in Canada in 2018, so it's relatively newer. This demographic here just kind of shows you the stages of it, and so there's 4 stages of it. The eggs, the larvae, or the caterpillars. You have the pupa and then the adults. They can, if they're in areas that's infested, they can produce more than 1 generation a year, so they can have more than 1 growth. The eggs will hatch in the fall, and those caterpillars will start feeding, and then they'll winter over in a little cocoony-like thing called a hibernaculum there. Come springtime, they'll wake up and they'll start feeding again on those boxwoods until they get into that pupa and then the adult stage where the new moths will lay the eggs and continue that cycle. So just like with the spotted lanternfly, if you see them, pull them off the plants, destroy them, and kill them. So the reason we wanted to talk about the box tree moth is the impact it has, the potential for the impact on our industry here. Ohio is one of the largest states for producing boxwoods. Oregon's the only state that produces more that we actually ship out. It's projected that our current industry is 200 to 300 million in the amount of money it involves. So it has a significant impact for our nursery industry here in the state. I didn't realize we grew so many boxwoods here. All right. Some references here. I'll pause for a minute if anybody wants to take a picture of it, but just some additional information. And I wanted to put this disclaimer in just to let everybody know that this presentation is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It explores the general relationship between gardening and mental well-being and does not provide medical or mental health advice. The content does not diagnose, prescribe treatment, or offer guidance on mental health medical conditions, and you should always seek the advice of a professional to seek diagnosis, treatment, and care. And with that, let's get going on our gardening and mental health. So as I said earlier, May is National Mental Health Month, and I wanted to highlight the positive connection between gardening and improved mental health. I can only speak from my own personal experience in that gardening does help improve my mood and my stress. If I'm having a particularly difficult day and I go out and putt around in the garden for a little bit, I come in a better mood. So usually, unless I'm fighting with weeds or whatever, and then it's a whole other story. Or something that's ate something I've grown. Today I was aggravated because I covered up some little magnolia trees I'm growing and I busted the top off of one of them, so I was very mad at myself that the cover was too heavy, and I'm like, oh, please survive, please survive. And of course, we couldn't talk about things without some statistics here. So, according to the National Mental Health Institute, research shows that mental illnesses are very common in the United States, affecting tens of millions of people. The scary fact is that a lot of people, more than half of the people, don't ever get any kind of treatment for those. Mental illness can cover a broad range of specific diagnoses, but for the purposes of this presentation, I focused in on depression and anxiety only. And sad to say that I am part of that statistic. I have depression and anxiety that I deal with. Most days are really good, some days it's not. But you know, the older I get, the more I find that those two things are affecting my day-to-day life. And so it's just getting up every day and kind of working through it. According to the CDC, adults aged 18 to 29 have a higher prevalence rate. Women are more likely to experience these. Also, individuals with lower level of education, lower incomes, and those living in rural areas also are more affected. They also found that race and ethnicity plays a role in this, and that Asian adults report the lowest symptoms of both anxiety and depression. Okay, I've got a quiz for you guys, a little pop question here. Who remembers what significant event started in 2020? Come on. Oh, you got it, absolutely. COVID, the pandemic, and the world shut down for a little bit. What do you think happened to anxiety and depression rates? Exactly, yep. So here in the United States, anxiety went from 6% in 2019 to 18.2% in 2022, and depression jumped from 7% to 21.4%. So it was a big, big deal. Why is that important? Anxiety and depression are among the most common mental health conditions in the United States, and it affects 1 in 5 people. So look around. If you're sitting in a row with 5 people, 1 or more probably have a little bit of that. Also wanted to bring awareness to our 988 suicide prevention line. Again, if you are struggling or if you know somebody who is having trouble, this is an anonymous and confidential way that you can reach out and get some help. You can call 988 or you can even text it. It's staffed 24/7. There's somebody always there to listen. So just passing it along as a resource. All right, let's get into the meat of this here, the benefits of gardening. So let's look at the physical side of it first. It's exercise. All the activities you need to do, bending, squatting, pushing, pulling, dragging the mulch, dragging the bags of dirt, all those good things, work your large and small muscles. If you have accessibility issues, it's modifiable. You can try raised bed, container gardens. There's even adaptable tools that you can do to help with those things. It provides access to fresh produce. That's going to ultimately lead to a healthier, well-balanced diet for folks. You get to spend time in nature. Who doesn't like that? Fresh air and sunlight. Both are great for physical and mental well-being, and a good dose of vitamin D is something I'm sure we're all long overdue for, a good long dose of it, not just one of these nice days. Working in the garden causes us to breathe deeper. This then helps our lungs, digestion, immune response, and increases oxygen in the blood. Being outside has been shown to reduce heart rate and muscle tensions, and then that vitamin D helps to lower blood pressure and increase, again, those vitamin D levels. It can lower your stress. It helps to lighten your mood. And it's rewarding, seeing the benefits of what you're doing, planting that seed, watching it grow into that plant or that tree, or getting your tomatoes or whatever produce or vegetables you might be growing there. I know for myself that providing those structured activities, you know, weeding, watering, even cutting the grass can be very soothing and calming. I have an acre behind my house that I mow. It's a field, and getting on that riding mower for that hour and just doing those laps around my field, and I can just, the stress goes away. It's just me and the mower out there watching the trees and the birds and the sky and all that good stuff. And gardening brings us together. It's a social connection. Community gardens, there's a lot of those around I see. But also, the gardening community is never short on anyone willing to offer advice, hands-on, you know, let me come help you do those weeding or whatever. And even sharing plants. I've gotten a lot of my plants just by people saying, hey, I'm getting rid of these, do you want them? Or driving along the roadside, you see somebody who's got a wheelbarrow full of irises or something that they're getting rid of. The Master Gardeners is just a group of like-minded folks that have a love of plants and gardening that get together and share our experience and failures and successes along the way. All right, let's move over to that mental health side of things. Gardening stimulates the brain, which helps to reduce the risk for cognitive decline. Some studies have shown that regular gardening may help reduce the risk of dementia by 50%. It's a mood booster. Cytokine levels rise, which in turn activate that feel-good hormone serotonin, just from working in the soil. There are even certain types of bacteria that live in soil that help that serotonin level as well. So what is cytokine? Not to get too science-y on you guys, but cytokines are the proteins that function as chemical messengers in our immune system. And then serotonin, what it does, serotonin is that feel-good hormone, which carries messages between nerve cells in the brain and throughout the body. It plays a key role in body functions such as sleep, mood, digestion, as well influencing learning and memory. It makes us engage in mindfulness or those structured activities, and this has been shown to reduce stress levels. By focusing on the different tasks involved in gardening, appreciating the colors in nature, acknowledging the work that you do, the hard work you put in, and then seeing those beneficial results, gardening gives us plenty of opportunities to practice mindfulness. Gardening also keeps you grounded in the present moment as you focus on the tasks at hand. Weeding, watering, planting, whatever it should be, you aren't worrying about your to-do list or what you have coming up next week. You're just kind of focused in on what you're trying to get done right now. And again, just because, I want the disclaimer up there one more time that we're not trying to prescribe or treat or any of that good stuff. So let's talk about why gardening helps. Again, kind of just to review things. Life can get super busy for some of us. Even for short periods of time, gardening has been linked to feeling calmer and more relaxed. Gardening provides a chance to just focus on the routine and purpose of your gardening tasks. Some people, they may only garden on the weekends. Some people may go out and do a little bit each and every day. It's that sensory connection. You use all of your senses: sight, smell, hearing, touch, and even taste. You grow vegetables or fruit. I have tasted dirt on more than one occasion as I have my garden gloves and I'm wiping my face or something and I get some dirt in my mouth. And gardening doesn't always have to be hard work and sweaty to be beneficial. Even those gentler movement activities involved in gardening are still just as good for our body and mind. It's that connection to nature, looking at the trees, looking at the sky. Who hasn't stopped for a moment to wonder at the beauty and awe of nature? I know every time I'm in my field doing that cutting, I'm always just checking everything out to see what has changed from last year. The colors in the fall, the leaves is just amazing. All right, how about some ideas to get started here if you're not a gardener? Container gardeners can be one of the easiest ways to get started. You can go with any size container. You can go as big or as small as you want to do. You can use an old empty planter, those big rectangular planter boxes, or even just raised beds is an easy way to start. Start small so that you don't overwhelm yourself, especially if it's your first time. Even if it's just one pot and one plant, that's all you need to do to start with. And I always have these big ideas of what I'm going to do, and then I'm like, nope, that's not going to happen. We're going to scale it back a little bit. So pick just a few plants to start. Some easy, tried and true ones that you might want to consider would be marigolds, zinnias, or echinacea. Coneflowers are one of the easiest things to grow. You can try herbs such as basil and mint can be very easy, but remember with mint, it likes to take over, so be careful with that one. Find something that appeals to your senses by its color, its purpose, or even just the way it looks. How many of you have walked through one of the garden centers and said, oh, I really like that plant. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna buy it because I like it. Done it myself. Keep it simple. Starting small, there's less time commitment and less chances of you getting overwhelmed with all those activities you have to do. And this is my favorite one, embrace the mess. Anyone who has gardened knows that plants are fickle, and good old Mother Nature, it's a gamble every day. You never know what you're gonna get. So bear that in mind, that when you garden, it's not always gonna be that perfect Martha Stewart or Better Homes and Gardens garden that we want in our head. Try grouping plants in odd numbers so you have a different variety of numbers there. Mix up the color palette, put some blues and purples and whites together. Even mix plants to make it nice and interesting. If you do like to do the container gardens, remember the thriller, spiller, filler concept of where you take one big showpiece plant and you put it in the middle, that's your thriller, and then you put some of those spiller vines, potato vines, things like that that kind of trail over the side of it, and then you fill in the gaps with those filler varieties, petunias, marigolds, things like that that fill in the pot and make it look really good. How about some accessories? Who doesn't like to accessorize? Do the same thing in your gardens. Wind chimes, statues, water features, koi ponds, depending on what size you have available, even places to sit and just enjoy it. Statues and decorations, birdhouses, feeders, bird baths. You could get unique and try some outdoor lighting. Even some fairy houses placed around can make it nice and interesting. It's your opportunity to let your imagination take over and be as creative as you want to. All right, let's talk about horticultural therapy next. Like I said, this was a term I came across working on this presentation and thought it would be really nice to give this information as a resource for folks. What it is, it's a professionally guided, evidence-based practice where plant-based activities are intentionally used to achieve specific, measurable therapeutic outcomes for people with identified needs. Sessions are led by a credentialed practitioner, built around an individualized treatment goal and designed to improve mental health, physical function, or cognitive ability through those structured interaction with plants. It's used to help conditions such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and dementia to help with those cognitive and behavioral effects of that. For physical rehabilitation and motor skills, it's working with individuals with injuries or disabilities that involve both large and fine motor skills. It's used in a variety of settings, such as psychiatric hospitals, behavioral health and treatment centers. The Veterans Administration uses it quite widely. Some prisons, schools for children with developmental disabilities, and then it's used a lot in the senior living communities. Not so much under that title of horticultural therapy, but just those structured activities around nature and gardening and being outside and all that. I used to do home care nursing, and I would go into some of the nursing homes, and a lot of those facilities have areas where the residents can go and do some gardening just because that's things that they like to do. How long has it been around? Pretty long time when I was looking this up. It actually started in the 1800s by Dr. Benjamin Rush. It was used in World War I and II to help our soldiers recover. And what do those sessions look like? So if anybody who's been through therapy knows you get about 45 minutes with that practitioner. They can take place inside or outdoors, either one. The treatment is geared around that particular individual's needs. And it's made accessible as much as possible. Raised beds, seated gardens, even beds that are specifically high enough to allow people in wheelchairs to roll up right underneath the garden bed and be able to get in there and do what they want to do. There's even a variety of accessible tools and devices that can help with this as well. This is just to give an example of what a raised bed looks like over there, and then we've got an indoor where they used a straw bale to grow some peppers. I'm assuming in probably some type of care facility that was done, but just to show that you don't always have to have dirt. Some pictures of some of those adaptable tools. Up in the top left, we have some ergonomic pruners. Right below that is a long-handled lawn shear, and then some easy grip tools. I have one of those Grandpa's tools that helps with weeds, and it's phenomenal with getting those tough dandelions out. I don't have to struggle with it. You just put it in the ground, step on it, and pull it up, and out it comes. So as we wrap up here, I just wanted to say again that gardening is meaningful. It can support physical and mental well-being. It provides that structured routine and purpose just by those normal activities of what we're doing. It encourages that mindfulness, just getting into I gotta go out and do this weeding, or I need to go out and plant these plants. It fosters that connection to nature and to people. Again, if you're into community gardening, even those of you that come here today, this is a way for us to connect over gardening. It engages all of your senses. It lets you be as creative as you want to be. I have all kinds of little statues that I drag out and put in my garden, and I just put them in all different spots just because I like to see them out there. And you can do as little or as much as you want to do. You don't have to have a full acre. You can do a few pots on your patio, whatever you want to do. All right, as a reminder, this is our Master Gardener Helpline. It is staffed live April through October from 9 to 11 on Tuesday mornings. If you call in, you'll get a live person. If not, you can leave a voicemail, or you can certainly use our email address there as well to leave a question. And before we close out here, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for letting me do my presentation here. Next month, come out on June 6th at 10 a.m. We're going to be talking about watering resources, specifically irrigation. One of our volunteers who is really good at irrigation is going to talk about, I believe it's drip irrigation is what he's talking about. So, and then here's just some more resources if anybody wants to take a picture that I found. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Short and sweet today.